Yeah, I will call to order this October 21st, 2024 meeting of the Town of Kiawah Island Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm Frank Cassidy. I'm the chairman of the board. And with me today hearing these cases are Ben Farabee, Lynn O'Leary, and virtually up there you'll see Phil Adams and Jay Lewis. Here from staff are John Taylor, our planning director, and Daniel Vincent from our planning staff, and our legal counsel, Boone Aiken. Our case rulings from this and any BZA meeting are available for public review and inspection during normal business hours at Town Hall. Since this meeting is being conducted virtually via Zoom, please be reminded, in order to make sure that we have a clear record for everybody who's listening live or maybe listening at a later date, ask all participants not to speak over one another. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Go to the mic and make your comment. At this time, I'd like to explain to the public the workings of the BZA. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body established to interpret and grant relief from the zoning ordinance. The Board of Zoning Appeals has jurisdiction over three types of cases: appeals, variances, and special exceptions. Appeals are heard regarding administrative actions or decisions by the zoning administrator or staff. Variances may be granted when strict application of the zoning ordinance would cause an unnecessary hardship. This board's actions must be based on specific standards, which you'll hear about today, as contained in the SC Local Government Planning and Enabling Act of 1994 and the Town of Kiawah's zoning ordinance. Special exceptions allow the board to permit uses if certain conditions as contained in the zoning ordinance are met. A simple majority vote of the quorum present is required to grant a variance or to overturn the decision of the zoning administrator in an appeal or to grant a special exception. Because today's hearing is a public fact-finding meeting, we are in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act and SC Code 6-29-70. 15 days prior to this meeting, an announcement was printed in the Post and Courier. A sign was posted on or near the designated properties, and a notice was mailed to the applicant or representative to residents within 500 feet of the application and to parties of interest. Persons, organizations, and the news media that have requested declaration of our meeting have also been notified. The Freedom of Information Act does not require notification of anyone other than the applicant and the parties of interest. Our purpose today is for interested parties to be heard in order to assist the board in gathering evidence pertinent to each case. If the members of the BZA feel the need for further information to clarify a case, the board has the authority to subpoena witnesses. In addition to your testimony, our board has been presented written information submitted to the staff by the applicant or their agent in each case. This information is now considered to be evidence and is entered into the permanent record of the body. It is assumed that it's complete, true, and accurate. Also, we've been presented data assembled by the staff for the purpose of clarifying the location and the effect on surrounding property. Our board is empowered to approve with conditions, or deny requests. In granting a variance, the Board of Zoning Appeals may attach to it such conditions regarding the location, character, or other features of the proposed building, structure, or use as the board may consider advisable to protect established property values in the surrounding areas or promote the general health, safety, and welfare. We are also authorized to defer a case should there be a need to obtain additional information. If an applicant's request is approved for a special exception, a variance, or an appeal of a decision by the zoning administrator, they must go to the Town of Kiawah Island to apply for permits. Variances and special exceptions granted by the BZA are valid for 12 months after this meeting. If an applicant's request is disapproved and they wish to appeal the decision of the board concerning this case, appeals must be directed to the circuit court. SC 6-29-870 states that the appeal must be filed by the applicant within 30 days after the decision of the board is mailed to them. Failure to file an appeal within the time limit deprives the court of the jurisdiction to hear the matter. For each case, staff will present information, the applicant will present their case, and we'll hear from others who wish to speak. Be reminded to direct comments to the board, not the applicant or other speakers. To expedite the meeting at this point, I'd ask all persons who intend to speak today to stand, and Boone will administer the oath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, would y'all please raise your right hand for me? Thank you. Do you promise that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, thank you, everyone. Mr. Chairman, turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Boone. I'll now call case BZA 24-000017 at 42 Greensward Road. First, we'll hear from staff, then the applicant, then others. All speakers should come to the podium, state your name and current address for the record before presenting testimony. I'll limit comments by the public to 3 minutes, and the applicant will have a chance for rebuttal if necessary. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the BZA, our first case being presented today is case number BZA 24-000017. The applicant and property owner, Stephen and Mary Lineberger, is that? Okay. Lineberger, being represented by Julie O'Connor of American Vernacular, are requesting a variance for the reduction of the required 30-foot rear setback for approximately 363 square feet for a proposed screen porch enclosure. The TMS number for the subject property is 207-07-00-026, and the property is located in the R1 zoning district. The required setbacks for the subject property are a 25-foot front setback from Greensward Road, a 15-foot side setback on either side, and a 30-foot rear setback from the golf course. The subject property is approximately 13,090 square feet in size. The subject property is developed and sits adjacent to Cougar Point Golf Course to the east. Based on Charleston County records, the home was constructed in 1980, and per Charleston County records, the property was acquired by Stephen and Mary in September of 2017. The adjacent properties to the north, the south, and the west across Greensward Road are located in the R1 zoning district. Cougar Point Golf Course is located in the Parks and Recreational District with a resort overlay. Subject property is subject to review by the Kiawah Island Architectural Review Board. Here's a GIS aerial of the subject property. Staff took a site visit on October 4th, 2024, and took a few pictures. Here's the front of the property. Adjacent properties. Here's the subject property. The rear. And these sides. So the applicant's proposed plans include enclosing an existing open deck for a screened-in porch. The existing lot coverage is approximately 34.7%, and the existing open deck is approximately 15 feet 4 inches from the rear 30-foot setback. Pursuant to section 1264 in regards to setbacks, uncovered decks may extend up to 5 feet into any required rear yard setback. The proposed screened-in porch will be approximately 16 feet 2 inches from the rear 30-foot setback. And currently, the subject property is legally non-conforming in regards to lot coverage and setbacks. The applicant's plans include 4,333 square feet of lot coverage, which is totaling 33.1%. The current lot coverage is 4,537 square feet, which is 34.7%. The applicant's plans will remove 30% of the open deck and enclose the remaining areas. The result will be a decrease in lot coverage by approximately 204 square feet, or 1.6%. The applicant has submitted to the Kiawah Island Architecture Review Board. The proposed project received KIARB conditional approval on April 23rd, 2024, stating, quote, "Given the reduction in footprint and simpler massing that would result from a smaller roofed area, the board has approved this variance." There's a proposed landscape plan provided by the applicant. Move on to the variance approval criteria. So for criteria A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. There may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this piece of property. The subject property is legally non-conforming in regards to setbacks and lot coverage. The home sits at a slight angle in reference to the building setbacks and lot lines. And per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "There are several extraordinary and exceptional conditions on this lot, including, number one, the house was built in 1980 and is over the rear setback due to large trees in the front yard. Number two, the house is set at an angle to the property lines. And number three, the deck is over the rear setback." Criteria B, these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. These conditions may be unique to the subject property and may not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. The property is located in the R1 zoning district. Adjacent properties along Greenswood Road are also located in the R1 zoning district. The subject property sits adjacent to a golf course at the rear, which is located in the Parks and Recreational zoning district with a resort overlay. Existing structures in the vicinity may or may not have similar encroachments. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "Due to the shape of the lot and orientation of the golf course, the house is angled and extends past the rear setback. The house was set far back from the property due to large trees in the front." End quote. Criteria C, because of these conditions, the application of this ordinance to the property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The application of this ordinance to the property may not prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "The application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the ability to improve the property by providing a more usable outdoor area. The deck is very hard to maintain and needs to be replaced at this time." End quote. Criteria D, the authorization of this variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good. and the character of the zoning district will not be harmed. Will not be harmed by the granting of this variance. The authorization of this variance may not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent properties or the public good. The proposed additions decrease the lot coverage and decrease the existing encroachments of the current open deck. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, the authorization of this variance would not be a detriment, but instead a benefit to the public good and character of the district. The deck needs to be replaced, and the reduction of the footprint will reduce the lot coverage, which is a benefit to the neighbors and the neighborhood. Also, the new porch is a substantial aesthetic improvement to the house, end quote. Criteria E. The Board of Zoning Appeals shall not grant a variance to the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in a zoning district, to extend physically a non-conforming use of land, or to change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. Granting of this variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted, extend a physically non-conforming use of land, or change the zoning district boundaries. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, the use of the space is not changing. It is outdoor living space, period. The space is a deck currently, and we are requesting a roof over part of the space and removing the rest. Will remain as an outdoor space and will not be heated or cooled, end quote. Criteria F, the fact that property may be utilized more profitably should a variance be granted, may not be considered grounds for a variance. BZA may not consider profitability when considering a variance request. Per the applicant's letter of intent, profitability is not a factor in this request. Criteria G, the need for this variance shall not be the result of the applicant's own actions. The need for the variance may not be the result of the applicant's own actions. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, the house and deck were in place before the Linebergers purchased the property in 2017. And criteria H, the granting of this variance will not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interests, nor will not adversely affect other properties in the vicinity, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, and intent and purpose of these regulations. Granting of this variance may not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interest, may not adversely affect other properties in the vicinity, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, intent, and purposes of these regulations. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, the public and neighborhood interests are not contrary to the intents of this variance request. The cart path of the golf course is a significant distance, and the neighboring properties will also not be negatively affected, end quote. Granting of this variance, criteria I. Granting of this variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of this ordinance. Granting of this variance may not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of this ordinance. Proposed plans reduce the existing non-conforming elements. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Daniel. Any questions from the board for Daniel?
Yeah, Frank? Frank, can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
We did receive one public comment. I will pull it up on the screen here. This was from a neighbor from 41 Greensward. And they offered a letter in support.
Okay. Any questions for Daniel?
Yeah, Frank, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm just curious, when When the written material that you just read says the deck as built and as proposed is 15 feet and change, and then 16 feet and change from the 30-foot rear setback, as I looked at the diagram, did that mean into the rear setback?
That's
Because
from,
I thought the existing deck was already pretty much into, over the 30-foot setback as a non-conforming use.
Looks to me like the setback is roughly at the edge of the house, and so
Yeah,
the
yeah.
deck is all the way into the setback.
Right. So I think that was clear. I was just looking at the written material that said the deck as built and then as proposed is respectively 15 feet and 16 feet and change from the rear setback. And one would normally read that to mean inside. And I just want to be sure everybody understands that it already is and will continue to be over the rear setback.
so, Phil, the existing deck is 15 feet 4 inches from the property line, and that's to the north of this picture right here.
Oh, from the property line.
Correct.
And therefore 15 feet into the setback.
Correct.
Pretty much.
And then
Yeah.
and then you mentioned the 16 feet 2 inches.
Well, that was just the difference between as built and as proposed. That's all.
Correct. Okay.
It was both the same question of just being sure I was interpreting the words correctly.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Ms. O'Connor, are you speaking for the applicants?
I'd love to. Hi there, I'm Julie O'Connor. I'm the designer on this project, and I think Daniel pretty much covered everything, so I don't want to belabor it, but I did want to point out this graphic is showing, it just doesn't show the cart path on there, but that 72-foot dimension line up there at the top is to the cart path of the golf course. So understanding that, there we go. Understanding that the 30-foot setback is prescribed for the golf course setback, we are quite, more than double that from the cart path itself, which would be the impact on the golf course. So I just wanted to point that out. That was in our materials as well, that we're not, sort of coming up on the golf course really close. And this is an existing condition. We feel like we're improving this existing condition by removing a good amount of lot coverage. And obviously, from an aesthetic perspective, we feel strongly that this is an improvement. The neighbor on sort of the north side, I guess, of our property is a vacant lot. And the only other adjacent neighbor is the one who has written a letter of support for us. I'd be very happy to answer questions. I just don't want to take up your time because Daniel did a great job of going through the salient points.
Questions for Ms. O'Connor?
Yeah, Frank, again, just to be sure I understand, as an uncovered deck, some intrusion beyond the setback was permitted, right, by the zoning laws. We're now covering it so that the intrusion otherwise would not have been without a variance. And that's really the main difference. We're not dramatically changing the dimensions of the deck as I see it.
That's right. As far as I understand, 5 feet of an open deck can encroach over a setback. So even the open deck as it stands goes beyond that. And even as you can see in this graphic, the house itself is over the rear setback. So it was built, I would have to believe, before these setbacks were established.
Right.
And so this house is non-conforming from the day the setbacks came into play.
Other questions?
This is Jay. Is the location, is that on is it 15 on Cougar, the tee box?
15.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. What was the
What
question?
tee box is it on?
I think it's on number 15. I was trying to visualize
Gotcha.
the house without actually visiting it this trip. That I know where it is, and it is pretty far off the cart path.
Any comments from members of the public? No? Okay. I'd entertain any motions that anyone would care to make.
I move to approve it.
I move we approve the, as proposed. There's been an effort, I think, to reduce there's been a lot, as well as some of the materials, and so I support their effort, and I recommend we approve it.
Thank you, Ben. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, I'll call the roll. All those in favor of approving this, Jay,
Approved?
Phil,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
and Frank, yes. So it's unanimous. We are agreed that this variance is approved. There's a decrease of over 200 square feet of coverage. It's also it reduces the footprint, improves the aesthetics, and it's a long way from the golf course. So, all right. Thank you, folks. Okay, I will now call.
So your jacket, sir?
Oh, you left your jacket.
I'll now call case BZA 24-000018 at 301 Surf Song, and we'll go through the same procedure. Dan, you're up again?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thanks, Frank. Our next case being presented today is case number BZA 24-000018. The applicant and property owner, Ronald and Lorene Veith, being represented by Tyler Smith, are requesting a variance for the reduction of the required 30-foot rear setback for approximately 21 square feet for a proposed screened-in porch enclosure located at 301 Surf Song Road. EMS number for the subject property is 264-09-00-047. The property is located in the R1 residential zoning district. The lot size is approximately 15,738 square feet, or 0.36 acres. The required setbacks for the property are a 25-foot front setback from Surf Song Road, a 15-foot side setback on each side, and a 30-foot rear setback from the golf course. The subject property is developed and sits adjacent to Turtle Point Golf Course to the north. Based on Charleston County records, the home was constructed in 1987, and per Charleston County records, the property was acquired by Ronald and Lorene Veith in August of 2020. The adjacent properties to the east, the west, and to the south across Surf Song Road are located in the R1 zoning district. And Turtle Point Golf Course is located to the north and is in the Parks and Recreation District with a resort overlay. Here is a GIS aerial view of the subject property. Staff took a site visit on October 4th, and here are a few pictures from the visit. Sorry, that subject property should say 301 Surf Song at the top. Here's the front of the property. Adjacent properties across the street. Left. The subject property. The rear. The applicant's proposed plans include enclosing a portion of existing open deck for a screened-in porch. The proposed plans also include adding 84 square feet of building footprint to the west side of the property. The existing lot coverage is approximately 37.83%. The existing open deck is approximately 26 feet 8 inches from the rear 30-foot setback. Pursuant to section 1264, in regards to setbacks, the uncovered decks may extend up to 5 feet into any required rear yard setback. The proposed footprint of existing open deck is being converted into a screened-in porch and is not changing.
Dan, before you leave that slide, can I just ask a question? And it relates to Phil's question earlier. I don't understand why this property is the current property is legally non-conforming. That deck is only 3 feet into the setback, and as I understand it, it's allowed to be 5 feet, and the square footage is below the maximum. So why is it not legally non-conforming?
So the current lot coverage is over 33%, which is the allowable percentage in an R1 property. That is just one part of the legally non-conforming. I can pull up the full site plan and I can show you where the setback is encroaching.
But you said in your write-up here that you can go 20% over the 33 for open decks?
You're allowed to you're allowed to go over 20% for certain items that include pervious materials. And I can get to that, but we can kind of talk about it now. Those allowed items for that qualify for the allowable 20% increase, they include driveways not defined by this ordinance that utilize pervious materials, pervious walks and patios, and raised courtyards created by walls 3 feet or less above the adjacent grade.
Okay, but not decks.
Not decks, correct.
Okay, I understand.
So
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
I explained the reason why it was non-conforming in regards to lot coverage, but if you look at your screen here, you can see that that raised HVAC platform extends into that side setback, as well as that staircase and that platform. So those are the reasons why it is non-conforming in regards to setbacks as well.
So when they did the raised HVAC, they didn't need a variance for that to be beyond the setbacks?
I don't have the knowledge of when that was constructed, but from the as-built survey, that was existing, which makes it legally non-conforming. But the home was built in 1987, and we do not have a record from the HVAC installation. Continuing, the existing lot coverage is 5,955 square feet, which is that 37.83%. The existing lot coverage for 301 Surf Song is considered legally non-conforming. And according to section 12-192 non-conforming structures, no person may engage in any activity that causes an increase in the extent of an existing nonconformity. The applicant's proposed plans remove approximately 103 square feet of maximum lot coverage and add approximately 84 square feet to the maximum lot coverage. They are also adding an additional 103 square feet of pervious material. The applicant has submitted to the Kiawah Island Architectural Review Board, and they were granted conditional approval stating, quote, "Board members determined that this request would have been approved at time of the original design approval," end quote. We'll go to the variance approval criteria. Criteria A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property. There may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions on this property. The subject property is uniquely shaped. The subject property is legally nonconforming in regards to setbacks and lot coverage. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "The concave nature of the rear property line creates a choke point within the buildable area in the center of the property, as defined by the setback. The original siding of the house extended an open deck over the rear setback line. With little covered/screened porch area, it is difficult for the homeowners to enjoy their home's living areas," end quote. Criteria B, these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. These conditions may be unique to the subject property and may not apply to other properties in the vicinity. The property is located in the R1 zoning district. Adjacent properties along Surf Song Road are also located in the R1 zoning district. And existing structures may or may not have similar encroachments. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "All of the adjacent properties in the vicinity have more conventional rear property lines without concave intrusions from the golf course." Criteria C, because of these conditions, the application of this ordinance to the property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The application of this ordinance to the property may not prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "Because of the rear property line and its resulting setback, the ability to have a reasonably laid out porch across the back of the living room is unreasonably restricted." Quote. Criteria D, the authorization of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the zoning district will not be harmed by the granting of this variance. The authorization of this variance may not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent properties or the public good. The proposed additions do not increase the building footprint beyond the rear setback line. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "The authorization of this variance will not impact either adjacent property, as it would allow a porch in the center of the residence farthest from either neighbor. The existing deck that occupies the area to be converted to covered porch space has been presented since construction around 1988, end quote. Criteria E, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall not grant a variance to the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted, to extend physically a non-conforming use of land, or to change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. Granting of this variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district, extend a physically non-conforming use of land, or change the zoning district boundaries. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, "The requested setback variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in a zoning district to extend physically a non-conforming use of land, or to change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. The property is a personal residence and will remain a personal residence." Criteria F, The fact that the property may be used more profitably should a variance be granted may not be considered grounds for a variance. The BZA may not consider profitability when considering this variance request. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, profitability is not the reason for this variance request, as this request is for the personal residential use. Criteria G, the need for this variance shall not be the result of the applicant's own actions. The need of the variance may not be the result of the applicant's own actions. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, the applicant or homeowner has not acted in any way to cause the need for this variance request. They've made no changes to the residence since acquiring it 4 years ago. Criteria H, granting this variance will not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interest, nor will not adversely affect other properties in the vicinity, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, intent, and purpose of these regulations. Granting of this variance may not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interest, may not adversely affect other properties, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, or intent, or purposes of these regulations. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, the granting of this variance would not be contrary to the public nor neighborhood interests. It is simply to allow a larger, logically designed extension of an existing deck to make a porch adjacent to the living room. Criteria I, granting of this variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan nor the purposes of this ordinance. Granting of this variance may not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of this ordinance. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, the granting of this variance does not conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of this ordinance.
Thank you, Daniel.
I got,
Oh, yeah, okay.
should the Board of Appeals consider approval of this variance request? Planning staff has asked for the following conditions, which is to provide an as-built survey post-construction to verify all encroachments match the existing plans. This concludes staff's review.
And you have someone filed a comment on this one also, right?
That is correct. We received one public comment. I'll pull it up on the screen here. Gerald Hogan from 303 Surf Song is in support of the variance.
Okay. Questions for Daniel? Daniel, the current lot coverage is 37.83. Does that include these 103 square feet of non-pervious, I don't know what you call it, pathways or whatever?
The 103 square feet of pervious is not that, correct? That is
Not included in the,
not included,
well, what's there now is not pervious.
correct?
What I'm asking is that in the 37.83?
It is included in the 37.83.
So the fact that they're substituting pervious material lowers the lot coverage,
Correct.
but they are adding 84 square feet to the footprint of the house.
Correct.
Okay, I got it. Any other questions for Daniel? Okay, Mr. Smythe?
Hello, my name is Tyler Smith, 386 Ashley Avenue. Don't have much to add here to Daniel's presentation, we are removing 4 areas of impervious lot coverage in order to grant a little bit of additional space to add on to the porch. In the drawing you see here, the cross-hatched area in the lower corner of the drawing, that's new screened porch where there is no porch or deck now. In the area that we are asking for the variance is just the grade hatched area. It is an unusually shaped lot in that it has that sort of bite into the back of it due to the just the shape of the lot. And I just want to be clear about what we were doing. If we can maybe zoom, can I zoom out on this, Daniel? Just to make sure that you're clear on what we're doing in order to lower the overall lot coverage. Okay. Zoom out. Okay. Yeah, there are 4 sections of lot coverage that we are going to be turning from impervious lot coverage to a pervious material at the ground level. That's this little bit in the interior courtyard. There are 2 stair landings. Really, it's just those 3, I guess. It's the pathway inside the courtyard and then the 2 pervious landings. They have a very small screen porch now. It's about 12'3" by 14 feet. It's a 5-bedroom house, which they enjoy with their grandkids and their kids, and they just really need some more room on their screen porch. And you guys may not know this, but the living room is the wing that comes out. Can you see this? Yeah, this is the living room here. And so the new screen porch would simply wrap around the living room and give them some more space to be able to open up that living room when the weather's nice. I don't think I have anything else to add at this point.
Is there anywhere where you can make it, like take away a little bit from the driveway, maybe put some shells in it just to reduce that lot coverage a little bit? Because you're sort of bumping out all over the place on the sides to improve that. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so where they've taken some of the bricks out and they're putting in pavers, is there anywhere else that you can possibly consider doing that to help with your lot coverage? Because you're over on that far side that we can't see on the very top now where the stairs are up there.
See if I
I'm just
can-
trying to see if there's somewhere you can help a little bit more.
Well, certainly we could, if we needed to, convert some of the driveway to a pervious driveway if you wanted us to reduce the lot coverage further than we're already reducing it.
As proposed, your lot coverage goes down from what it is now. Not all the way to the 33%, but down from what it is now, correct?
Right,
Yes.
correct. That is true.
By 21 square feet.
Yeah.
That sounds right to me, yes, sir.
Right, they're taking, it was 103 and they're taking out 81, so.
Right. Any other questions for Mr. Smith?
Frank, as I understand it, sort of the main change here, in addition to adding that little corner onto the porch, is that it's turning an uncovered porch into an enclosed porch?
Correct, yes. Most of it is an uncovered deck, an existing uncovered deck that we would like to put a porch roof over to make it a screened porch.
Anything else, anyone? All right, I'd entertain any motions anyone would care to make.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, let me call the roll. Jay?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Lynn?
Sure. Yep.
Ben?
Yes.
And Frank, yes, so it's unanimous, we approve this one.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. John, any further business? Okay,
We will have a case next month,
okay,
just one case. And that date will be November 16th. I'll double check on the date, but
November 18th.
my apologies, 18th, and that's at 1 PM. No further updates.
Okay. Anything else, anyone? Okay, we stand adjourned, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.